He fed 2 alien sisters. 10 minutes later, 10,000 warships arrived. Captain David Reynolds had been stationed on the remote mining outpost of Kepler 442b for 18 months, and in all that time, he'd never seen anything more exciting than a solar flare. The barren planet orbited a dim red dwarf, its surface scarred by massive extraction operations that fed the insatiable hunger of humanity's expanding colonies. Most days, David's biggest concern was ensuring the automated harvesters didn't malfunction. That changed when his proximity sensors detected 2 small life forms approaching the outpost. David stepped outside his habitat dome, the artificial atmosphere crackling around him as he adjusted his environmental suit. 2 figures stumbled across the rocky terrain, clearly not human. They were tall and willowy, with elongated limbs, and pale, almost translucent skin that seemed to shimmer in the wan sunlight. Their faces were gaunt, their large, multifaceted eyes reflecting an exhaustion that transcended species. "Please," one of them spoke. Her voice somehow transmitted directly into his suit's communication system. We haven't eaten in cycles." David had heard of the Zephyrian refugees, a proud species that had lost their homeworld to a cosmic disaster. Most spacefaring civilizations had turned them away, viewing them as beggars and potential security risks. The Galactic Council had issued guidelines about limited humanitarian assistance, but few bothered to follow even those minimal standards. "You're Zephyrians," David said, stating the obvious. The taller of the 2 nodded weakly. "I am Scylla, and this is my sister Naya. We've been traveling for so long. Our ship's food synthesizers failed weeks ago." David looked at them for a long moment. Regulation clearly stated that unauthorized contact with alien species required immediate reporting to Colonial Command. He should call it in, let the bureaucrats sort it out. But the way Naya swayed on her feet, the hollow look, in both their eyes, David had seen that same expression in refugees back on Earth during the water wars. "Come on," he said, gesturing toward the habitat. "Let's get you something to eat." The sisters followed him inside with cautious hope. David's quarters were Spartan, functional furniture, a small kitchen unit, and walls lined with technical manuals and family photos. He immediately went to his food processor, one of the few luxuries his position afforded. "I don't know much about Zephyrian dietary requirements," David admitted, programming the machine. "But humans have found that most carbon-based life forms can process our proteins with some modification." The machine hummed to life, synthesizing a meal rich in amino acids and essential nutrients. David had to use nearly half his weekly ration allocation, but he didn't hesitate. Within minutes, he placed 2 steaming plates before the sisters. Scylla and Naya looked at the food with something approaching reverence. They ate slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. David watched them regain color, saw strength return to their movements. It was a simple act, sharing food, yet something about it felt profoundly significant. "This is incredible," Scylla said between bites. "The nutrient balance is perfect. How did you know?" "Lucky guess," David replied, though he suspected the food processor's adaptive algorithms had done most of the work. "There's more if you need it." Naya looked up at him with her large eyes. "You don't understand what you've done, do you?" Before David could ask what she meant, his communication array exploded to life. Warning signals blared throughout the habitat as his screens lit up with more contacts than he'd ever seen. His hands flew over the controls trying to process the incoming data. "What the hell?" David muttered, staring at the readings. "That can't be right." The sensors showed massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Not 1 or 2 ships, hundreds, then thousands. David's blood ran cold as the count climbed past 10,000 vessels, all appearing simultaneously at the edge of the system. "David," Scylla said quietly, her voice now carrying an authority that hadn't been there before. "I need to tell you who we really are." The communication array crackled with an incoming transmission. The holographic display materialized, showing a figure that made David's breath catch. The being was clearly Zephyrian, But unlike the two sisters, this one wore elaborate ceremonial armor that seemed to bend light around itself. Behind the figure, David could see the bridge of what was obviously a massive capital ship. "Your Highnesses," the figure said, bowing deeply. "We have finally found you. The entire Imperial fleet stands ready to retrieve you and address any who may have harmed you." David slowly turned to look at Scylla and Naya, understanding dawning on him. The sisters were sitting straighter now, their exhausted refugee, personas falling away like discarded cloaks. There was something regal about their bearing, something that spoke of authority and power beyond imagination. "Imperial Fleet Commander Vox," Scylla replied, her voice now carrying absolute command. "Stand down all weapons, we have not been harmed." "But your Highnesses, our long-range sensors detected you were in distress." "We were," Naya interrupted, glancing at David. This human, David Reynolds, found us when we were near death from starvation. He fed us from his own rations without hesitation, despite having no obligation to do so. He showed us kindness when the entire galaxy had turned its back on refugees. Scylla stood, and David could now see the unmistakable bearing of someone born to rule. "Commander Vox, you will transmit new orders to the Galactic Council immediately. Humanity is to be granted protected species status, full trade privileges, territorial guarantees, and military protection." "Your Highness," the commander said carefully, "the Council may resist such—" "The Council," Scylla's voice turned cold, "will comply, or they will find themselves explaining their decision to 10,000 Zephyrian warships. Make it clear that humanity has earned the personal favor of the Zephyrian imperial family." David slumped into his chair, overwhelmed. "Your royalty. We are the crown princesses of the Zephyrian Empire," Naya confirmed. "We were traveling incognito when our ship suffered catastrophic failure. We've been wandering for weeks, and in all that time, encountering dozens of species, you are the first person to simply help. But I just—" David gestured weakly at the empty plates. "It was just food." "No," Scylla said firmly. "It was compassion. It was seeing two beings in need and responding without calculation or expectation of reward. Do you know how rare that is in this galaxy?" The communication array buzzed again. This time it was Colonial Command, their signal nearly incoherent with panic and confusion. David could hear multiple voices in the background, all trying to understand why 10,000 alien warships had just appeared in their sector. "Captain Reynolds," came the voice of Admiral Harrison. "What is your status? Are you under attack?" David looked at the two sisters, who nodded encouragingly. "Admiral, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I think humanity just made some very powerful friends." Over the next hour, as diplomatic channels exploded with activity and news of humanity's sudden elevation spread across the galaxy, David sat with Scylla and Naya, sharing stories and watching the political landscape of known space reshape itself in real time. "You know," David said eventually, "I'm never going to live this down. The guy who started an interstellar diplomatic revolution with a couple of sandwiches." Naya laughed, the sound like crystalline chimes. "David Reynolds, you didn't just feed two hungry refugees. You restored our faith that there are still good people in this universe, and for that humanity will always have the friendship of the Zephyrian Empire." As David watched the massive fleet beginning to organize itself into a protective formation around the mining outpost, he couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, he thought, the smallest acts of kindness had the biggest consequences. The galaxy would never be the same.